Nonprofit governance.
Nonprofit answers.
Nonprofit board.
Nonprofit management.
Nonprofit marketing.
Nonprofit resources.
The Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits presents Nonprofit Everything, the podcast about everything nonprofit, with your hosts, Andy Shurick and Stacy Wedding.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Nonprofit Everything. I'm Andy Shurick, and we have my co-host Stacy Wedding here. And today we're joined by some extra space. You can tell by the sound of the podcast, this is going to be a little bit different today. We have brought in some nonprofits in Nevada who, some really smart people that we want to sort of wrestle this topic. And we have a handful of listener questions already that we're going to propose. And so it's going to be a little bit different than usual. So we hope you enjoy this episode. And as always, thanks to the Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits who makes this possible. And with that, I think we're going to jump right in. And I think the first thing is maybe to have everybody introduce themselves. Jamie, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Jamie Weller-Lafavor. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada.
Great. And we have Kate.
Yeah, Kate Hibbard Gaines, the Director of Development with 3 Square Food Bank.
Great. And Heidi.
Hi, I'm Heidi Parker. I'm Executive Director of Immunize Nevada. I'm also the chair this year for Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits.
Thank you. So you can see that we've got a pretty high-powered team. Thank you, all three of you, very much for taking time out of what is undoubtedly really a hectic time for each of you to talk to us and to share this with nonprofits really around the country. We really appreciate it. So with that, maybe let's see, Heidi, you want to start out and just kind of give us sort of an overview of sort of what's going on in your world?
I would love to. So Immunize Nevada, we actually have 2 offices. We have an office in Las Vegas and we have an office in Reno. So we are already set up to work in somewhat of a virtual space just because those offices are connected virtually. So we made the decision to go remote last week. We'd actually made that decision before, I would say, things got pretty chaotic. And we also are not participating in any outreach events. Most of those subsequently were canceled anyway. So really looking at just what we can focus on while working remotely, how we can best support all of our partners that are in our coalition that are experiencing the same level of uncertainty, and just kind of doing the best to support my team and actually other nonprofits. I've been hearing from a few in the community too that just know of the AND piece and have been reaching out.
Great. And Jamie, how about Boys and Girls Club?
Sure. Well, the safety and health and wellness of both our kids, their families, and our staff is of utmost concern. We made the difficult decision to close all 13 club locations yesterday. We have been busy with contingency planning as far as, just exploring relationships with the local municipalities and hospitals about the opportunity to help out with the need for childcare for their necessary workers. So those are just kind of preliminary discussions that we're having with those entities right now. Just so much in flux. Last week, we were coming up into a huge fundraising event, Sneaker Ball, that was scheduled to take place on March 14th. We made the difficult decision with the support of our executive committee to cancel that event, but then quickly regear to what we called our first annual Sneaker E-Ball. So we hosted that event on Facebook Live on Saturday at 6:30. With a huge effort to really kind of rally the troops and technical expertise to make that a possibility. And we're continuing our efforts to communicate with our supporters about the need to have their continued support in the form of online donating and bidding. We just posted our video from that broadcast on YouTube, and we are developing a communication calendar to try to encourage and, elicit as much participation as we can. We know that the environment is just so tenuous right now with the psychological scarcity that most people have in their minds. So it's a hard communication. I know a lot of our team members have expressed their concern about us moving forward with our efforts, but our team, both myself and Andy Bischel, who's our president and CEO, are adamant that we need to complete what we started on Saturday. So we are full steam ahead on fundraising and really just trying to look at innovative ways to keep our workforce productive. That way we are caring for those individuals during this really difficult time and maintaining as many jobs as possible. I know that our brother and sister organizations throughout the state of Nevada are being faced with very, very similar issues.
So, Jamie, this is Stacy, and I'm very curious to know, do you have the numbers yet of the kind of viewership you got online by turning your event virtual?
We do, actually. We have about 180 active donors, and we have about $55,000 in revenue. And we did do a lot of promotional ads to try to reach as many people as possible on our Facebook platform. And we were able to reach over 11,000 individuals pre-broadcast. So people reached during our Facebook Live. We had 1,400. Our post-event views, we had about 1,200. We had 10 shares, 30 likes, and 32 comments. And that was as of just yesterday afternoon. So we're continuing to see some shares on the event. I think we're going to see a lot more views, hopefully, now that we have posted the video up to YouTube. Because, in our live broadcast format, we did have what we call the waiting room to allow people the time and opportunity to join us. But admittedly, we did have a technical difficulty that pushed our broadcast from 6 o'clock to 6:30. So I think if we would have actually broadcast live at 6 o'clock as intended, as advertised, we probably would have seen a lot more viewers at that time.
It still sounds like you were able to pivot and adapt. And when I saw the email come out from your organization, I was impressed at the positive tone. You were able to make it sound fun and, hey, hang out at your house in your jammies and sneakers or whatever and watch us. And I thought, that's in some ways you got to try to keep that spirit alive during these tough times.
No, absolutely. I mean, it was definitely a challenging format. I think Andy and myself both, we did have some individuals watching live as we were at our Reynolds Notes for Notes studio broadcast. And, normally you would talk to a crowd of 550 people and have good energy. And we had probably about 12 people in the room, my husband and my daughter included, who were admittedly making a lot of faces at me as I was playing the role of the Masters of Ceremony. So thankfully I have this full-time job as Chief Administrative Officer and not rely on the need to perform well in that MC format, because I could probably be broke by now.
Well, thank you for sharing all that with us.
So, Kate, tell us what's going on at 3 Square.
What's going on at 3 Square? There's a lot going on. Yeah. Well, 3 Square, just to give you a little background, is Southern Nevada's only food bank and largest hunger relief organization serving Southern Nevada. Andy, I don't know if this happened during your time or not, but right now we are deploying our own contingency plan and an emergency food plan. And I know we've talked about it as an organization. There's been a few times, I think most recently when the government shut down, but thankfully never had to fully deploy that plan. So right now we're essentially scaling down our distribution channels as resources become less available to us. Typically, we work with about 180 agency partners or other nonprofits that we serve food to around the valley. And we're scaling that back to about 43 sites or organizations that have been strategically chosen because they're able to distribute large quantities of food, but also because of where they're geographically located across the valley. So that's a, high-level organization, take on it. From development and marketing, we've received a sort of outpouring of support, which has been amazing, but also a little bit overwhelming all at the same time. So many people in this community want to give back and are looking for the best way to do that. And so we are in a unique situation in that we rely on volunteers as a big part of our workforce. We see about 1,200 volunteers come through our campus each week under normal circumstances. And that just helps us get our everyday orders fulfilled. And so right now we are still having volunteers come on site, but also working to find unique ways to reduce the number of people that need to physically be at 3 Square. As we deploy this emergency plan, we will have a lot more pop-up or what we call mobile distributions throughout the valley. So we're hoping that we can do a lot of the packing and sorting there on site with volunteers. And then we've also responded with launching an coronavirus emergency food fund. And so every dollar donated to 3 Square, we can put 3 meals back out into the community, and that has a lot to do with our purchasing power and our ability to source food, very large quantities for very few dollars. And so the food fund will allow us to be as nimble as possible in these uncertain times for the foreseeable future.
That's great. And it actually is a perfect segue into the first question, the first listener question, which is, how do we best deal with the drop-off in volunteers?
You know, we started to worry about that last week as we understandably started to see some of the large corporations across the country start pulling back, right, on all levels. And so they were having groups for canceling. But I think what we found is a lot of individuals are still stepping up. And like I said, we're trying to be a little bit innovative and do something different out of the norm. So we're, of course, taking every precaution and every step to make sure that we're maintaining the health and safety of our volunteers and our staff and our partners and the people that we serve in our community. That's huge. And so we're communicating that stuff out to everybody, ensuring them that we're taking all the necessary precautions to do the extra cleanings around our facility, and still just communicating that we still do need volunteers. And so if you are willing and healthy and able to help, we're accepting that help.
Unfortunately, with our club closure, us having the back off and volunteer participation is kind of reasonable. There's not much that we can use volunteers for at this time. No, I will tell you there's been a lot of heavy lifting at our board level, which is made up of all volunteers. We have been in lots of emergency conference calls and consultations with those individuals in a virtual format that we've really been appreciative of their guidance and their time because they're all busy business professionals dealing in their own lives, and making the time for our mission has been really thoughtful and highly impactful. As far as our day-to-day volunteers, those individuals that work with our youth, we have called those individuals off, and we are officially closed right now through April 6th with the possibility of looking at a reopen over spring break. We will invite those individuals back when we deem it safe to reopen our doors for our youth under normal operating capacity. Should we move forward with the provision of childcare for first responders, we will not be utilizing volunteers during that time. It's actually, unfortunately, affected a lot of interns and graduate level students that we had in partnership with both Roseman University and UNLV that were completing their practicum hours or their intern hours at our clubhouses, and all of those have been put on hold for the time being. So it's kind of yes, we've geared up on a board level side, seeing a lot more hours and participation from them, but as a boots on the ground, we've seen a complete drop off on that side.
Heidi, how about you? Any changes in your policies or work around volunteers?
We did. We did absolutely have to look at both from our volunteer perspective, but same with our interns as well. Most of the work that they all do really is out, at our outreach events. And so since those weren't happening, our team got creative. And so we are actually in process of getting this launched right now, but we are going to be providing our volunteers and interns with some guidance on becoming online ambassadors. Big part of what we do at Immunize Nevada all year round is combat misinformation. And unfortunately, there's kind of a tsunami right now of misinformation around COVID and just everything related to it. So we are going to be helping them with content that they can share on their own channels, helping them be social media kind of champions for this issue. And we'll see what happens. We're excited, I think, for this opportunity to be a little creative and innovative in how we can utilize them, while, especially for our interns, helping them still have as much of a meaningful experience as we can make for them during this time.
I love the innovation, and you bring up a really good point for our listeners, right? About now is the time to sort of stretch some of those creative muscles and figure out, are there ways to engage people that we can use the channels that oftentimes we neglect when we've got regular volunteer opportunities, but things like online ambassadorship, or if there's, whatever database projects or things that are great stay-at-home projects for people to do, especially people who've got extra time on their hands right now. So thank you for sharing that. That's great. I think with that said, we should move right into our next question. And I'm sure, at least I know Boys and Girls Clubs in particular has really, of Southern Nevada, has really had to face this. But, one of the big, I think, alarming points out there right now that a lot of nonprofits are struggling with is fundraising events. And deciding when they should cancel them. I know that some nonprofits still having things scheduled in May that are wondering, will this pass? Can they still, should they still hold something in May? Many of you have already had to cancel. So our next question relates to that. And the question was, we need to cancel our fundraising event. Any strategies or ideas to recover some of that fundraising, basically lost revenue? So any advice from those on the phone would, I'm sure, be greatly appreciated by many of our listeners.
This is Heidi. I'll actually just mention something that I found out today. With Nevada being declared a certified disaster state, small businesses and nonprofits are eligible for some funding through SBA, Small Business Administration. And so I think for nonprofits who are unable to reschedule those events, knowing the amount of revenue that was lost, I think gives them an opportunity to consider applying for that funding. I know the chambers in both Las Vegas and Reno are working to help both businesses and nonprofits with that. So I think just from a resource perspective, that might be something that groups want to look into.
And, we will put that in our show notes. We always at the end of these shows put a list of resources, links. I was also thinking about that related to the volunteer question. There was a great resource that I happened to run into the other day of an organization that has gone through and developed a pretty extensive curriculum for training volunteer managers and people how to, connect with volunteers. And those are the kind, and they're offering it for free. So I'll make sure that we put that link in there too, because those are the kinds of resources right now if people have a few extra minutes on their hands, may want to tap into. So Heidi, we'll be sure to get that link from you.
I think another thing, we have a 5 and 10K run that is being rescheduled to the fall now. And so there's a lot of questions, right? Bringing sponsors along, bringing registrations along. How do we navigate all of that? And we're just started working through it. But again, just from a resource perspective, I've seen so much posted online and through various support networks that are offering up, best practices, webinars. And so I think the information's out there. Just seek it out and, talk to your colleagues and networks, because I think we're all in this together. I think almost all nonprofits are probably facing some level of something that has had to be canceled or rescheduled.
And I know, Jamie, you talked already a bit about how you had to transform the sneaker ball into the e-sneaker ball. Were there any specifics from that you want to share that might help our listeners?
Oh boy, I know it was just last week, but it seems like it's so middled in my head because there were so many moving pieces and parts to that. So first and foremost, I think we were kind of in the mix of it as the situation was getting very dynamic and very fluid as far as COVID-19 and the governor's declaration of the state of emergency. And, we made a call before that actually happened, though that did happen in very, very close proximity thereafter. It was interesting because Andy and I kind of toiled with, do we postpone? Do we cancel? Do we reschedule? What does it look like? And, admittedly, a lot of the consideration that we had is we were really uncertain about what it was going to look like a week from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. And, at some point, life is going to get back to normal. And we have other events that we already have on calendar. We have a golf event at the end of June, and we have our really big child engagement event called Girls Day Boys Night Out in October. And, looking at our available resources and, could we postpone it in addition to those two other events and, kind of just look at the pluses and minuses of it all, and then just decided to take the leap to go virtual. And if it weren't for the production capacity that we had actually hired on earlier this year for our Sneaker Ball, I don't know if we would have done it, but thankfully we had Jilly Gilday-Schaefer's expertise with the JGS group for pre-event production and event day call that helped make that decision a lot easier. So having that expertise within the event production realm really did allow us to innovate in a very, very short period of time because, it wasn't just, a cell phone in front of Andy and I, us making a plea. It was a full video production. We had to think about microphones and video cameras and, recapturing what entertainment we had previously canceled, me becoming the MC, which was supposed to be Chet Buchanan originally, which I'm sure he would have done a much better job. But, just trying to think about what available resources we had as far as expenses, re-gearing those in a way that we thought would be most profitable. And, the success will really be greatly, determined on what it looks like at the end of the week. We did leave our silent auction and live auction up through Wednesday, and then we'll actually close everything on Friday at 3 p.m. And then what was our live auction, we're now calling a premiere auction, and those items will actually close tomorrow at 3 p.m. So, we'll see. I mean, it's a kind of a gamble. We actually put out some more expenses just to kind of make that happen. We're fortunate to be in that situation. So, it's Las Vegas. We put it all on red, so hopefully we'll come out profitable.
Well, fingers crossed. We're wishing you the best, and sometimes you just need to make your best decision at the time. So it sounds like that's what you guys did and weighed all the factors. And last but not least, Kate, I'm assuming that there may be even a different set of challenges because you're getting an influx of people wanting to donate. At least that's what I think you alluded to. And so maybe you can talk to us from that vantage point, how you're managing all of that right now.
Yeah. Well, I'll say we had a donor volunteer and lunch planned for the end of this month. Made the decision and the call to postpone that and put out that communication earlier today. And but before sending that out, that's the communication that actually came from my desktop. And so I just wanted to be prepared with what I would expect to be the natural responses, which are, thank you, but how can we help during this time? So I'd give the advice to be prepared for what you think will be practical responses and how to quickly respond. I think that staying in touch with your constituents or with your donors, your supporters, and particularly your big stakeholders is really, really important during this time. So while we've put out information to the general public, our executives have called key stakeholders in advance to let them know what we're doing and to keep them informed. The luncheon that we decided to cancel had some key people that we called and discussed that plan with in advance to make sure we were all on the same page so nobody felt blindsided. I don't think they would, though, but we were making smart choices in the wake of, with the information that's been sent to us. And then, I've been getting so many emails. I have never seen this many emails. And so to the best of my ability, I'm responding. And if not, finding somebody who can provide the best answer. I think that is one of the things that we're going to look back on and be proud of, that we've kept in touch with people during this time.
Well, kudos to you. I know everybody, each of you on this call today and on this podcast are dealing with this in different ways and different extenuating circumstances and challenges. So thanks to all of you. And I know in particular, food banks are being hard hit. So appreciate the work that Three Square and others like you are doing, all your distribution partners. With that said, why don't we go into the next question? And for this one, it really ties into more to do with the board stuff. Someone said, my board is asking me if we should be canceling our board meeting and our strategic planning retreat this month. What are your thoughts? So I'd like to, maybe we can even start with you, Heidi, to jump in and talk about, you're an executive director. Would love to know what you're doing with your board right now, and if you have any thoughts to help this listener.
Our board actually already meets virtually because they are all over the state. So we already have that in place. So I guess for us from a meeting perspective, we're a little bit of just business as usual via Zoom. I would say I'm being cautious in terms of how much I'm communicating with them right now, and just knowing that they, some of them are in leadership positions where they're really probably overwhelmed right now with this at their own institutions. So I'm just continuing to keep them updated, with what's happening here. And if we get to a point where then we need to implement an emergency meeting at some point, we will. But right now, we actually just did our strategic planning. So we got it in before this happened. And I would say from that perspective, I think it's really important to follow the guidelines for social distancing. We know that it's easy to not be aware that you're sick yet, and we for sure would not want people to be together in a room and potentially be infecting somebody. So I think from a social distancing perspective, in person until that recommendation changes. But there's just so many great resources out there to do things virtually. I think this is, again, that time to take advantage of some of those.
Absolutely. And Jamie, you had mentioned a bit about your board, especially your executive committee, has really had to roll up their sleeves and kind of get into action with some of your alternative plans. Can you speak to that a little bit more about how your board is handling all of this, and what advice you would give someone who wants to figure out their board meetings and strategic planning retreat moving forward?
Sure. I mean, that's strategic planning in and of itself is kind of onerous and difficult. I think most of us would agree. So to do that virtually might be a challenge. However, I think this is an amazing time to capitalize on actual time had. For some of us, especially here at Boys and Girls Club, with us not having kids in clubs, we are really looking at this as a capitalized opportunity to do things that often get put aside, such as planning. So I know Andy and myself are really being thoughtful about what opportunities we can take for the planning side and how to engage our board members with us. All of our meetings will be moved to teleconference. We are using the expertise of our committees to help us out with certain projects like vendor selection. We were just in the process of selecting a new HVAC vendor for all 13 clubhouses. So we're going forward with that meeting virtually on Friday. And so we're not packing up shit for sure. So what we're doing is we're moving forward with our regularly scheduled meetings and looking at innovative formats where possible to do video conferencing. So it's a little bit more engagement oriented than just a traditional teleconference. And we're moving full steam ahead. I know that Andy and I and the rest of the executive team here are just really looking forward to, despite it being a bad situation and a lot going on in the world, just to kind of slow down a little bit and really capitalize on the time that's being given to us, which is, both difficult, but and it is a gift in some respects as well. So our hope is to come out of the backside of this really in a great position, both from a facility maintenance and organizational planning perspective, to really just be full blown when we're back in operation.
Great. I love the stance you're taking, right? Many people, as sort of odd as it may sound for some of us who are seeing this as gloom and doom, others are looking at this as an opportunity. And so being respectful that it is a difficult time, but also embedded in that is a lot of opportunity, is what I hear from you. So exciting to hear that. And Kate, what does this look like for Three Squares Board right now, given the state of affairs?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I could add a whole lot more that Jamie or Heidi haven't already sort of discussed, in that we're following those guidelines for social distancing and making accommodations to adjust as needed. But again, I think it's been constant communication with our board chair and the executive committee by our executive team.
Okay, great. Well, and I would just share and add that I know some of the clients that we work with here at my firm, we have been talking to them, and they did have strategic planning retreats planned for later this month, and those have gotten canceled. And instead, we're doing some other there's enough in their worlds that is being rocked that we're looking more at a short-term contingency plan, because thinking long-term right now until some of the dust settles, I don't think anyone is quite in that mindset at this point. And so we're figuring out sort of everything from scenario planning of best case scenario, worst case scenarios. So for those of our listeners who may be facing that, perhaps there's other ways to adapt your planning right now. And with that, I'll let Andy take us through the next couple of questions.
I'm actually going to do something dangerous and jump completely off script and ask a question that has occurred to me that I think is interesting. So on the call, we've got Immunize Nevada, we've got the Food Bank, we've got Boys and Girls Club, all of which have a very important role to play in this particular problem, right? There are going to be a lot of nonprofits that doesn't apply to, that aren't going to be talking about health or childcare or education or feeding people in this emergency. What kinds of strategies do you think we could offer to somebody who might be in the animal welfare or performing arts or something that isn't directly connected to this? Is there, because I think the food bank right now it's probably a relatively easy ask when we're talking about fundraising. What kinds of things do you think you would offer up as suggestions to people that aren't in that kind of strong position from a fundraising perspective?
I think Stacey just said something that I thought was really important, was kind of that switching gears to look at that short-term, more emergency type of planning. I've seen a lot of comments in Facebook groups from directors and other nonprofit staff that, are basically like, having to manage or lead an organization during a pandemic was not part of the job description, right? And so how does that apply to your organization, and where are you seeing those challenges? So yeah, if you're a museum or performing arts and you're shut down, what is that message? And I think the Reno Chamber did a great job today. They sent out an update, and they really encouraged their members to not ask for ticket refunds from local organizations, and encourage them to consider that a donation. And that's such a small, I think, action that can have a really big effect for a lot of groups. And so I really appreciated that the Chamber made an effort to let people know that that's just something they could do.
It's a very, very interesting question. Admittedly, most of my professional career has been in, healthcare or, social service. So those are definitely organizations that find themselves in a very relevant place in the current crisis. Something that somebody said to me recently is, think about ways of how your mission can provide relief or comfort for people. So, for example, we've seen a lot of the museums in, Europe do virtual tours, or maybe it's taking some pictures of, puppies and kittens if you're a youth serving organization. And sometimes we just need that levity. Right now, I think if you look on social media, you see so much about COVID-19, and it's causing a lot of stress and uneasiness amongst, members of that platform and then the broader community. And thinking about thoughtful, tasteful ways of injecting some kind of relief would probably be greatly appreciated and allow those charities to maintain their relevance during this time where the preserved focus will definitely be on primary services to keep people, well stocked or sustained or fed or cared for in the healthcare environment. So, I wouldn't say newsjack, because that's probably not the right term, but I would just look for innovative, thoughtful ways of keeping your mission, present and relevant, and, really think about how that could look in those outlets.
That's great. Thank you. So I guess we'll go back on book then. So here's the next question. What are you doing to adjust your asks during the current state of the world? Are you still sending out or planning to send out mailings, emails, etc.? I know many have canceled events, but I'm specifically wondering about other appeals.
This is Kate. I'd like to just jump in on this, and maybe more on a personal level. Just my personal inbox over the last few days, there have been a few emails that seem a little tone deaf to me. And it's the result of businesses or organizations that have probably pre-scheduled some kind of email to go out. But I think that was one of the first things that we at 3 Square went and looked at, a week or so ago, thinking, what do we have in the queue and what do we have lined up? And so I know sometimes you can't stop them when they're already out the door, a mailing piece or something like that. But just something to keep in mind, like what do you have scheduled over the next coming weeks, months, that you might want to pause or adjust a little bit on that end?
Kate, this is Stacy. I have to really just echo what you're saying. Just as a side note, it was interesting. Right when this all started to heat up, I had gotten 2 different organizations that sent me it didn't look like something pre-scheduled. It looked like a personal outreach to me to ask, if my firm would sponsor an upcoming event. And I was just a little bit, I think, taken aback, I guess. It felt like it was not the time to send that out. So I'm hoping that people who are doing these things are being really sensitive to not only the economy and the worries that are out there right now from everybody from a financial standpoint, but just sort of we're all dealing with some serious, unprecedented stuff. So to get an ask in the middle of it feels like if it's not messaged correctly, feels like it could be taken really poorly and hurt the long-term relationship.
Yep. So I've done some unsubscribing this week in my personal email, like as a result of some of the emails I received. But you're right. We're leading with gratitude in our messaging, right? Ensuring folks that the food bank is here to serve the community. We've been established for 12 years now, over 12 years now, and we will continue to be here and serve this community thanks to the generous support we've received up to this point, and hope that we can continue to receive support going forward into this unknown as we all travel through this uncertain period of time together.
That was really well said. Does anybody have any final thoughts or anything they want to sort of throw in before we close?
This is Heidi. I'll start. I think for me, one thing that's really important over these next couple of weeks is just ensuring that I'm connecting with our team in this kind of new 100% virtual setup, that they're connecting with each other and that we're providing opportunities for that in a number of ways. Even our team talked today, they want to start sharing, what they're binging on, on Netflix. We started a collaborative playlist on Spotify So just some of those things that I would say probably are important for the mental health side of all of this. It's isolating to be in this situation, and I want to make sure that my team stays healthy with all of that too. So I think for me, that my final thought is just making sure that I'm not only connecting with all of our partners and everybody externally, but that I'm doing as much or more for my team internally.
Yeah, this is Kate. Something we're always saying in our office around my team is try to put yourself in the shoes of the donor. And I think that rings true now a whole lot. And so it's a great time to stay in touch with your supporters and also just express gratitude to those who have helped you along the way. And I love what Heidi said, just practice some good self-care as well. Take care of yourself, because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of everyone around you.
Well, this is Jamie. I think in times like this, it's really important just, to recognize the things that you can't control, and then just take the opportunity to control the things that you can. So, your perspective on things and your outlook and your mentality is so key and important, not just for you personally and your family, but then for the teams that you work around. So thinking about things as possibility and positivity as much as possible. It's kind of infectious, for the lack of a better term. We have all of this disease going around with COVID-19, but, sometimes if you can just provide some positive reinforcement for things about the possibility and the positivity, the things that do exist to us in this era of scarcity, I think really lends itself a far way. Messaging to your donors, messaging to your team, leading with gratitude, I would agree with all of those things. We're kind of building the plane as we're flying it right now. I don't think there's a guidebook for, what we should and shouldn't do. I know we're being very bold with our continued efforts to raise money in the light of the cancellation and the virtual event. For some, it might not resonate. For others, it might. So my hope is that people understand why we're doing what we're doing, the importance of the services that we provide in the community, and that we're going to be here for those when they need us. And really look to control what you can and be positive and think about the possibilities that exist in this new altered reality for all of us.
Well, Jamie, Kate, Heidi, thank you so much for joining us today. That was absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
We really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your completely hectic schedules, because I know what it's like right now for you. So on behalf of all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today.
Andy, there's a lot going on in the world right now, isn't there?
Oh my gosh, yes, there is.
I mean, I don't know about you, but every day there's more changes and more craziness. So how are you getting through it?
Oh, I'll be great. I'm glad that we were able to do a podcast about this specific topic. And Stacy had a great idea. We're going to try to do this again very shortly on the same topic with a different set of experts, so we can get a different lens on it. So I don't think this is going to be the last you hear from us on this topic.
No, and that sort of leads to, we want your questions. We know these are unprecedented times, and we know that you've got a lot on your mind and a lot of things you're just navigating and working through. And certainly we're not the experts, but we will try to bring you different insights, different opinions, and people going through it just like you, because you're not alone in this.